ElevenLabs recently freshened up their user interface, and this is a great time to do a full walkthrough, see where everything is and how it works. We're going to start on the speech synthesis page. This is the main action area and where you'll be dropped into right after you create an account. We have two tabs in here, text to speech and speech to speech. Text to speech is where you drop in some text, pick a voice, and hit generate speech.
With this cutting-edge technology, you can transform your living space into a smart home of the future, today.
With the voice drop down here in the lower left, you can choose what voice you want to use. Now, the first time you use this, what you're going to have listed are the pre-made voices, things from here down. And there are some great voices in here. You can sample any voice you want by just clicking the little play button next to it.
But these are not normal times in our politics.
In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since.
Okay, so you're not going to believe this, right? So there I am, right?
And as you start using voices and creating projects, you'll end up with more voices up here in some separate lists, like things that you have generated using the Voice Lab, any voices that you have cloned, and any of the professional voice clones that you've used from the voice library. Voice settings opens up a pane on the right-hand side, and in the settings, you can choose which model you want to use. Now, for the most part, they're going to automatically pop in the model that works best with the voice that you've selected. You can change this just by clicking this little right arrow button and selecting a different model. Now, it will come up if you choose one that doesn't really fit with it and give you a recommendation to switch to a different model. It'll also have the recommended label next to the model that it thinks that you should use. Now, that's not to say you can't use a different model. For instance, 11 Turbo V2 is known as a pretty fast model. So if speed is the thing you're looking for, you've got a lot of text to generate, you might want to try that even with a voice where 11 Multilingual V2 is recommended. Also, 11 Multilingual V2 has multiple languages, 29 languages to choose from. So if you're looking at a model that is set for English and you need a different language, you might want to try Multilingual V2 to get other language capabilities. We're going to go back here, and the other options you have are stability, similarity, style exaggeration, and speaker boost. These options won't be available with all models. Some just have the stability and similarity, but with the 11 Multilingual V2, you do have the style exaggeration and speaker boost options. So stability, if we move that over to the right, the voice is going to be more stable, and that mainly impacts between generations. So if I'm generating multiple chunks of text and I want them to sound like the same voice from one generation to another, stability being higher would be pretty important. The issue you can run into with that is if you have stability too high, it can tend to come out sounding sort of monotone within each generation. So you get more variety if you slide it to the left, you get more consistency at the risk of being more monotone if you slide it to the right. Similarity is talking about the similarity of the voice to the originally recorded voice. So if you want it to adhere very strongly to whatever voice was originally recorded, whether it's a voice clone you made or a clone or a generated voice that came from the lab or the library, you want to move that over to the right. If you want it to sound less like that originally recorded voice, you slide this over to the left. Style exaggeration, I think, is an incredibly fun setting and slider. The default for this is 0, and keeping it at 0 will give you the best processing speed, but it also gives you the least amount of flavor. Moving this over to the right will often give you a lot more style and expressiveness in whichever voice you're using. Sometimes increasing this above 0, especially going really high with this, will get you some wild results. Sometimes they're fun, sometimes they don't work for the project you're working on. And moving this anywhere above 0 does increase the processing time. Speaker boost gives you a slight enhancement of the speaker similarity to the voice that was originally created. It's very subtle. It's not going to take something that's bad and make it great, but it can make something that was pretty good into great. It does increase processing time just a little bit, but it's worth playing with in your generations to see if it helps you get exactly the voice you're looking for. Now, anytime you come into these settings, you can always get back to the default settings by hitting this reset down here on the bottom, and that's a great place to start whenever you're creating something for the first time or working with a new voice. Speech to speech, I think of like a voice changer. You can take speech that you've recorded, or you can record directly into ElevenLabs and then generate that exact audio in someone else's voice. I'll drag in a short recording and show you what it sounds like. Here's my recording. The worst part of my day was that overflowing turlet. Then we'll pick a voice. I'm going to go with Judy. Generate.
The worst part of my day was that overflowing turlet.
Same thing, same style, but a completely different voice. And I think she did a much better job than I did. As you go along, any generation that you want to download, come right over here in this bottom right-hand corner, click the download button, and it'll start downloading. You also have the history tab up here right next to generate. You don't have to remember to save every generation as you go. They're all right here. And you can play a sample of them by hitting the play button, or you can download anything you want right there. If there are things in here that you know that just didn't work and you want to clean them out, you can click this Manage History button in the upper right-hand corner, select the ones that you want to delete, and mass delete them. So far, we looked at some voices that were in our drop-down list here, but there are way more voices available than that. And where we find them is on the Voices page. So if we come over and hover over this menu, it'll expand out. We click Voices. We have two things to work with here. We have the Voice Lab and the Voice Library. You can see I have lots of things in my Voice Lab. This is a place where you sort of collect voices that you want to keep using, and a place where the voices you've generated are stored. So let's say we want to generate a voice. We want AI to create a unique voice for us that isn't in here yet. We just click this plus button. We say Voice Design, and then we give it some parameters to work with. We can say female or male. Pick the age, although I find this to be the least accurate setting or filtering option in ElevenLabs. So if you're not finding what you want in the right age group, try a different age group. I've heard plenty of voices that are labeled as middle age that either sound old or young, plenty of old voices that are actually middle-aged or young. Middle-aged is a decent place to start, so that's what we'll do. Choose your accent, American, British, African, Australian, or Indian. We'll stick with American. You can set the accent strength from 30 up to 200%. We're going to keep it at 150% for now. When you're generating a voice, if you have a project in mind that you're going to use this voice for, I highly recommend that you drop in some text here that is part of your project. And I say that because different types of text are read in different ways. The way an audiobook is read sounds very different than the way a news broadcast is read, which sounds very different than a conversation between two friends. I'm going to use this line that's a podcast intro. Now, another thing to keep in mind here is that you can use up to 1,000 characters. However, the characters used when you're generating voices do get deducted from your balance. So if you don't have a lot of characters in your ElevenLabs account, this could eat through them pretty quick. Once we've set what we want, provided some sample text for it, we'll hit generate.
Welcome back to Voices of Tomorrow, the podcast where we dive deep into the innovations shaping our future.
If we don't like that voice, we hit generate again.
Welcome back to Voices of Tomorrow, the podcast where we dive deep into the innovations shaping our future.
And we can just keep going.
Welcome back to Voices of Tomorrow, the podcast where we dive deep into the innovations shaping our future.
All right, and we say this is the voice. We like this one. We're going to use it. We just click Use Voice. You give it a name. Then you can add some labels. There are 3 labels already set in here, which you can get rid of if you want. And these are just the settings we picked in the beginning. We said middle-aged female American accent. We can add other labels here by giving it a key and a value. We might say region, southern, or something like that. And then you can describe the voice as vividly as you want to. We can use this description box also to tell us what we plan to use this voice for. So podcast intro in the description. And then I don't have to remember that I named it Lisa in amongst all these other names. And then you click create voice. I'll go ahead and do that. Once we do that, you'll see it appears here. We can get rid of this most recent generated with the drop down, and you can see there's Lisa. And if we want to use her, we just click use, and it takes us back to the speech synthesis page. And now it has Lisa as the voice that's set. Now let's go back to voices. We're still on the Voice Lab. If we click this plus button, in addition to generating voices within here, we can do an instant voice clone. To do an instant voice clone, we need to give it a name. And if you're cloning your own voice, I would recommend that you add the style to the name. For instance, I have an instant voice clone that is Bob Conversational, and I have one that is Bob News. For one of those, the sample audio I used was very conversational. And for another one, I used sample audio where I was reading news scripts because they're very different styles of speech. You can either record audio right within here, or you can drag and drop existing recordings. Make a nice clear recording because whatever's included in there, if there's background noise, that's going to come out in the voice that you use. It does not matter what you say in the recordings. It can be you sitting there talking to your cat, as long as the cat doesn't talk back because that would confuse the AI. 1 to 2 minutes of sample audio is all it needs to create a really decent voice clone. You add some labels to it, put your description in, and then you'll need to check this box that says you have the right to clone this voice and use it. Then you click Add Voice. Your instant voice clone pops up here in your voice lab. It only takes about a minute for it to do its thing and show up in the voice lab. This is my Bob News Voice instant voice clone, and somewhere in here I have a Bob, there it is, Bob Conversational voice clone. The instant voice clones are really decent, especially if you record something in the same style that you intend to use. But if you want to go even deeper, ElevenLabs does offer a professional voice clone. That you'll find with this same plus button down at the bottom, Professional Voice Cloning. You can see I've reached my limit of 1. I don't have my professional voice clone back yet. When you submit your sample files, which you do in pretty much the same way you do for instant voice cloning, but you upload your sample files for this, and they run the model for professional voice cloning about every 4 weeks. So depending on where that aligns with when you submit, it can take 4 to 6 weeks or so to get that professional voice clone back. These are being run through a model. There's some manual intervention as I understand it, but the results I've seen from this are very, very good. So I'm excited to get my professional voice clone back. For that, you do need a larger sample size, something along the lines of 30 minutes to over an hour, and all the other best practices apply, like background noise and style of reading and that kind of thing. The voice library is probably the most fun page on all of ElevenLabs. This is where a bunch of voices that ElevenLabs and other people have created using professional voice clones or using the generative AI to create voices. There are tons and tons of voices in here. They just keep going. Probably the first thing that you want to do when you're searching for voices here is click this little settings icon and change the language to whatever language that you're working with. We're going to say English, and I'm going to leave the accent open to anything that it has listed in here. You can limit this if you want to search, say, for an English accent that is just like a Southern accent, a New York accent, any of those kinds of things you can do. I'm just going to leave it on any accent as long as it's English, because I don't speak any other language. And then just start sampling.
I'm not interested in age. People who tell me that age are silly. You're as old as you feel.
Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that the sample text that you're hearing what these voices are reading is generally not provided by the person that cloned the voice. Instead, it's usually these general motivational quote kinds of things. So you sort of have to imagine how those voices are going to sound when they're being used for your project, your style, your text, even though they're being read probably in something different than what you plan to have it speak.
Life is what happens while you are making other plans.
To reach true success, you need to learn how to make your mind work for you, not against you.
The best thing about the future is that it only comes one day at a time.
Are you a time traveler? Because every time I'm with you, it feels like the world slows down and we're caught in our own little time bubble.
You gotta be careful if you don't know where you're going, because you might not get there.
Long ago, there was a princess named Erisita. She lived in a castle with her mommy and daddy.
If you're looking for really distinct, wild voices that have a lot of character, you can filter this by just characters and animation. That'll get you some of the wilder voices.
Hi there, I'm Benny. I'm perfect for animated kid characters. I'm enthusiastic and excited to be a part of your project.
All right, lads. Now we got a proper northern accent for you. Not like these other southern...
It had this like creepy ass clown dog with big red lips, so naturally I had to buy it.
It is fatal to enter any war without the will to win it.
Of course, if you're looking for something that's a little more mainstream, you can choose other options up here like narrative or informative and educational, or you can just leave it wide open and see what you like. As you're going through the voice library, there's some things you want to pay attention to about these voices. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll either have a yellow check mark, which means this was a professional voice clone. This is someone that actually cloned their voice. Or it will have this little lab beaker here, which means it was a voice design generated voice, just like we created back in the voice lab. There also may be other icons here. For instance, this lock icon says that the person that created this voice is making it available for us to use, but that it may not be available forever. And what that means is when the person that owns this voice decides to pull their voice from the platform, it won't be visible to anybody that has never used it yet. But if it's in your voice lab and it's a voice you're using, you'll get a notice that you have 90 days left to use this voice and it's going away. This little pink square with an M in it says that live moderation is enabled. What this means is the person that owns this voice has elected to have ElevenLabs moderate the use of the voice. It's going to be checking what you generate and make sure it's not prohibited. This can slow down the generation process a little bit. And then this blue square with a number in it, like 2x or 3x. That indicates that the voice owner is charging for the use of their voice, and this is always based on a character multiplier. In this case, it's a 3x, so what that means is that for every 1,000 characters that you generate using this voice, it's going to cost you 3,000 characters from your ElevenLabs account. ElevenLabs allows users to share their professional voice clone and set these restrictions, like the notice period, live moderation, and to charge and be paid for the use of their voice clone. And you can do that when you create your professional voice clone by indicating how much you want to charge if you want these restrictions enabled, and whether you want to be paid in ElevenLabs credits or cash via a Stripe account. Over on the right, this little people icon tells you the number of users that have added this voice to their lab and are theoretically using it, and the little paper icon shows you the number of characters that have been generated using this voice. So if you're looking for something that isn't being used everywhere else, you want to look for low numbers here. There isn't an option to sort by least amount used, but you can sort by latest, which tends to be the newer voices that haven't been used much yet, but that doesn't mean they won't be.
There is no greater harm than that of time wasted.
If we find a voice we like in the library and we want to use it, we just hit Add to Voice Lab. It asks us to give it a name, so we can name it something that maybe makes more sense to us than what it's called in the voice library. And we click Add Voice. Finish, and we can go back to our voice lab right there, and we will find that guy, Cody. There he is. He's in our voice lab. We'll drop this generation screen out of our way, come over here and click Use, and it'll take us back to the speech synthesis page where Cody is queued up as our voice. For large projects like audiobooks, we have a projects page over here. Click on that. You'll see all your existing projects here. You can create a new project, and you can choose an empty project where you're going to type or paste in the text. You can also initialize a project from a URL. So if you've got a website, you've written an article, and now you want to turn it into audio, or you want to use that as voiceover for a video, you can initialize the project from a URL, copy and paste in the URL of wherever that article is, and it'll get to work right away. You can also use a document like a PDF, a text, or an HTML file, or an EPUB. If we say initialize from URL and hit next, you can see it wants a name, the URL to create it from. It'll ask you what voice you want to use as the default for new chapters, which voice model you want to use, the quality. If you want more than the standard quality, you can choose high or ultra. These do come at a premium, so the high is a 20% character cost increase and the ultra is a 50% character cost increase. Optionally, you can set the download settings, which would include normalizing audio, so you can set it that when you download, you want it to automatically normalize the audio on your download, and that will take it between -18 and -23 decibels with a true peak of -3. You can also set the metadata if you want for the file that you're going to download, give it a title, author, even an ISBN number. And then pronunciation dictionaries, those are optional too. These would need to be in a PLS file format, and they need to use one of the standard phoneme formats, and they only work with English V1 and Turbo V2. This is a little test project that I was working with yesterday. I did it from a URL. I just pasted in the URL from my website. Since you tell it what the URL is and the voice you want to use for your project, once you come to this page, it is ready to start generating. And you can do that one paragraph at a time by clicking the play button up here at the top. And if you turn on this automatic continuation button, it'll just go through paragraph by paragraph and start converting that to voice. You can regenerate a paragraph if you want just by selecting it and then clicking the play button. It also tells you its progress with these black bars down the right side. Anything that has a black bar beside it has been generated, and anything that doesn't hasn't been generated. Downloading super simple. Click the button, and you can drop this down and decide whether you want to download the whole project or chapters. And if you've got some audio or a video that you want in multiple languages, then dubbing is the place for you. What dubbing allows you to do is bring in an existing video or audio, and you can bring it in by uploading the file or giving it a link to a YouTube video, a TikTok, or any of these other things. Just tell it where it is. It'll bring it in. You just tell it what language the original is in, and if you're not sure, it'll detect it for you, and then what target language you want it to be dubbed in. And you have this list of 29 languages to choose from. You have some other important options here. One is whether you want this to be a dubbing studio project. If you check this box, once it's created, this will become a project that you can now edit, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And you can also decide to add a watermark to reduce character usage by 33%. So if you allow ElevenLabs to put their watermark on your output video that says dubbing by ElevenLabs, you get 1/3 off the cost of the dubbing. Let's look at a project I've already done here. This is what the dubbing studio looks like. By checking that box when I created that, it gives me access to this, so I get this timeline looking editor. And what it does, it takes your video, it transcribes it, and it drops the lines down in this left column. Once it's transcribed, then it translates it into whatever language you've indicated. And for any line, if you don't like the way that it generated, you can just hit generate audio. In the dubbing studio, you can keep track of what's going on down here. If there were any of these that had not been generated, it will say stale next to this little regenerate icon. Within the timeline editor, you can move, you can cut things using trim, you can even add clips to it. And you can see I have the original. We click down here. I'm not a guru or a YouTube superstar. I can't show you how I... Here's the Chinese translation.
我不是大师或 YouTube 超级明星，我不能向你展示我如何建。
We can switch and look at the Spanish translation.
No soy un gurú ni una superestrella de YouTube. No puedo mostrarte cómo construir un canal enorme.
I did this one in multiple languages.
أنا لست خبيرا أو نجما على يوتيوب. لا أستطيع أن أريك كيف بنيت قناة ضخمة.
Now, I don't speak Chinese, Spanish, or Arabic, so maybe somebody can tell me how good that turned out. You can toggle here between the original language and the translated language and work with the timeline in that fashion. You can also, if you want to add a new language to any of this, you just click the little plus button here, pick the language. So you could take your video and dub it in 29 different languages. In the export settings, you can decide which versions of this you want. So if I want the Arabic MP4, click export, and there I go. I can also get the SRT file if I just want the captions in Arabic, or if I want them in addition to the video, I can grab the SRT file as well. And you have some other formats available too. The Payouts page in ElevenLabs is where you make sure you have your Stripe account connected, and you can see how much you're earning from your professional voice clone usage. If you have opted to do a professional voice clone, and you've said, yes, I want to share it with the community. When you set up your professional voice clone and create it, that's when you'll decide whether you want to share it, how much you want to charge, whether you want to be paid in character credits or cash. And this is the place where you just connect your account if you did cash and check in on your earnings. As far as pricing goes, ElevenLabs has multiple options, including free. Now, some of the functions are only available in certain tiers and above. In the free version, you get 10,000 characters per month, which they say is about 10 minutes of audio. You get access to the voices in 29 language. You can translate with automatic dubbing. You don't get the dubbing studio access in the free plan, and you can generate voices in the Voice Lab. The starter plan, which is $5 a month, it's $1 for your first month, and I hate it when people do this, when they say, oh, it's just $1 a month. No, it's $1 for the first month. And then it's $5 every month after that. In the starter, you get 30,000 characters a month. You get access to the instant voice clone. You do get access to the dubbing studio, and you have a license to use what you generate for commercial use. And you get the commercial license, which means you don't have to give attribution to ElevenLabs like you do with the free. In the creator version, you get 100,000 characters per month. That's about 2 hours of audio. This is where you get professional voice cloning. This is also where you get access to projects. So if you're doing audiobooks or something really big like that, and higher quality audio up to 192. They do have bigger plans if you're going all in, all at it. The larger plans get you more characters, but they don't necessarily add features beyond what's in the creator account. Now, ElevenLabs has just started offering an annual plan, so you can buy a year up front, $50 a year for the starter, $220 for the creator, $9.90 for the pro, and so on. If you're not using ElevenLabs yet, there's a link in the description. Yes, it's an affiliate link, which means I may receive a small commission if you end up making a purchase after clicking my link. And I do sincerely appreciate it when folks use my link. If you want to go deeper in the ElevenLabs functions and how to create the best quality output, I have videos on several aspects of that, and I'll put one right here somewhere.